Welcome to this Olympic edition of the Breakaway. My name is Ben Holden. Today we are talking 2022 Olympic hockey with Team USA forward Kenny Agostino, who joins us from Russia. Kenny is playing for Torpedo, having a tremendous season, 20 goals so far in 47 games, lighting it up over there with Andy Mealy, who will be a teammate of Kenny's on the Olympic team once we get going with that in Beijing in February. Kenny, thanks for joining us. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, Ben. Thanks for having me.
No problem. It's our pleasure, and we really appreciate your time and in making this work. So let's go back to the initial phone call that you got, I presume, from John Van Beesbroek, the GM. Where were you? What do you remember? What was your reaction when you got the call that you were going to be a USA Olympian?
Yeah, it's funny. I think it's, just you phrasing the question, I think it's something that me and I'm sure every other player on this team, you're never going to forget that phone call. I actually was under the weather. We were on the road in Sochi, so I was just kind of resting in bed, and it's actually a kind of funny story. I actually saw I was getting a call from a Michigan number. I'm pretty sure it was Michigan, and I gave it the bud because I thought I was a solicitor or something. I didn't think anything of it. And then, lo and behold, 10 minutes later, my agent, my U.S. agent called me or texted me. And he says, "Hey, Van Beesbroek is trying to get a hold of you. Can you talk?" So I said, "Of course, call me." So it was the same number. He called back, and you just kind of will never forget those words of him saying, "We'd like you to be a part of, the 2022 men's Olympic hockey team." So special moment. Obviously, the original reaction is just pure joy. You think about everything when a moment like that. You think about where you started. You think about your family, your friends, everyone in our sport. I feel like the support system that we have is just as important as what we do on the ice. So, called family immediately, and it was a special night for sure.
That's awesome. Congratulations to you and your family. We were talking offline a little bit. I know your family's very involved in your career, and they always have been. So who was the first person that you called? Was it your mom and dad? Was it somebody else once you got the call from GM John Van Beesbroek?
Yeah, no, my dad gets the first call, and obviously him and my mom equally were everything for me growing up and supporting me in this amazing hockey journey. He's honestly just more reliable with his phone. That's why he got the call before my mom. So
yeah.
Then obviously I told my mom and siblings, and then slowly started to tell some close friends. And but my parents for sure get the first call.
That's awesome. So how closely were you monitoring this? I'm sure very close, but I want to get your reaction. When things started to go south with the National Hockey League players, the NHL and the PA said, "You know what, we're not going to go." So was that a shining moment for you? Like, hey, I got a shot here. Walk us through that. How did that process all go for you as you continued to play for your team in Torpedo?
Yeah, so I think I actually remember talking about this with a few other European pros this past summer. I ended up leaving for Russia because I'm pretty sure there was a lot of talk about it then. But then it was either Bettman or someone came out and they said, NHL players will be going to the Olympics. And, obviously, like everyone saw as the craziness of this season happened in North America, we thought there'd be hope. And then once you get the official announcement that NHL players weren't going, now you're really starting to think about this thing. Yeah, I have a legitimate shot, I would think, just, based on who's available. So I never really was sure until I got the phone call. I wasn't trying to get my hopes up, but obviously it's hard not to think that you got a chance to represent your country in the Olympics. So I was just kind of focusing on my job and being the best I could be for Torpedo, and then it just made the call that much sweeter when I finally got it.
Kenny Agostino joining us here on our Olympic edition of the Breakaway. Kenny, as a little kid, you grew up in Jersey. We're going to get into that as we go along here. Played at Del Barton, amazing career as a prep player. Was it a dream of yours when you were little growing up to wear the red, white, and blue? I know you played a couple games with the development program back in 09-10, but where do you stand there? Was it something you always dreamt about as a hockey player growing up where you did in New Jersey?
For sure. I think it's something that me, like many other professionals, where hockey was our dream since we were a kid. I think the three, at least especially being a Jersey kid playing in the States, the three pinnacles of hockey to me growing up were always, a Frozen Four, a Stanley Cup, and playing in the Olympics. And fortunately, it looks like I'll be able to do two or three, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I think it was always a dream, and I was fortunate enough to be, I want to say 8 or 9 maybe when the Miracle movie came out, the Disney movie, which took the hockey world and non-hockey world by storm. I think it probably brought a lot of kids into the game because it was such a well done movie. But obviously, all hockey families loved that movie, and it gives you an image to dream, and so it was always definitely in the back of my mind growing up. And then obviously I think it goes away as you get older, but like I said, once that announcement came out that NHLers weren't going, it obviously came back to mind.
And you and I, again, we were talking a little bit offline. You have some chemistry with another man that's going to be on the U.S. team who plays in the KHL, plays for Joker at Brian O'Neill. You played a little bit with Brian, so you guys have some chemistry from your days together at Yale, correct?
Yeah, correct. We played. We were on the same team for 2 years, and we were line mates for most of my sophomore year, on and off. I would say actually, maybe 3/4 of the year, half the year. But we've stayed in touch. As both of our hockey careers have, kind of they had. Obviously, he's had an amazing career. He's Mr. Helsinki, and obviously our only returning Olympian. So he's been a great guy to talk to throughout this process, and I'm looking forward to seeing him. Obviously, I know he's about to have a baby with his fiance, but I'm looking forward to seeing him in Beijing.
Yeah, and to go even deeper in terms of the connections you have, another man that we'll talk to down the road here before you guys all head to Beijing is Andy Mealy, who's your teammate. Andy played at Miami in the NCAA ranks like you did. For those that don't know, you guys have had some pretty electric chemistry this year. So I would think head coach David Quinn is going to take some of that into consideration. Am I right?
I would hope so, yeah. I mean, obviously, Andy and Oni, those are two guys I'm familiar with, especially Andy as of late, obviously. And, just, off the ice, he's been so amazing, as a friend, and obviously the only other American on my team welcoming me in Nizhny this year, and kind of helping me, guiding me through the first European professional year is always hard on some guys. You don't really understand how difficult it is to play on this side of the world and feel as disconnected to the States with the time difference as you do until you're over here. But he's been awesome, and in terms of on the ice, yeah, he's obviously a guy I love playing with, and whatever Quinny has in mind with the lineup, obviously we're going to buy in. But no, it'd be pretty cool if I can play with both of those guys.
That would be really good. I'll bring that up when we talk to him in one of our later episodes. I'll go back a little bit with Quinny. Have you had a chance? How did that work? Speaking of the coach, David Quinn, former Ranger coach, BU guy, played there, coached there, worked with Jack Parker, led them to a Frozen Four, and like you experienced, which we'll get to. But has Quinny pulled you guys all together? Have you done Zooms? How have you guys communicated once the team was named, Kenny, with head coach David Quinn?
Yeah, so I've been fortunate enough to, I had a phone call with him about 4 or 5 days ago, with him just congratulating me and welcoming me to the team, and kind of giving me a little intro on what he's expecting for us as a group, and talking a little bit about how my year's going, what he's been up to. But obviously, his resume speaks for himself. He's a very well tenured coach. He's coached all over at every level. But then we had a team Zoom call a couple days ago, which was really cool. It was kind of the first time this team and staff has officially been not together in one physical room, but I guess virtual room at that. But it was good to kind of see everyone's faces and Quinny to address us as a group, and kind of set expectations and what kind of style he's looking forward to, and obviously gave us his thoughts and had us all ready to run through a wall, I think. So looking forward to getting out to LA and meeting all the guys, and then head over to Beijing together.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. Run through the wall together. It's been, I'm sure you know this, but it's been since 2010 that the U.S. has medaled in the Olympics, and I know that means an awful lot to you guys as players as you get ready to embark on this journey.
Yeah, for sure. Of course. I think it's no surprise we all have a similar goal in mind. And, there's absolutely no reason why it can't be attainable for us, So the idea is that, it's great to be an Olympian, but there's very few people that can call themselves an Olympic medalist and obviously a gold medalist. So, obviously that's the big goal, but it's a process, as we know, and it starts by coming together early in LA and then having a good first day in Beijing.
Yeah, Kenny Agostino, our guest from Torpedo in the KHL, played his college hockey at Yale, bunch of different teams in the NHL. Kenny, I want to go back to your days growing up in Jersey. You went to Del Barton. I know that school for two things, hockey and lacrosse. Did you play lacrosse, or were you just a hockey guy when you went there?
I played actually a little growing when I was younger in like 6th or 7th grade, but hockey was really my one true passion and love in sports. I played a little baseball growing up, but to be honest, by the time I got to high school, I was already full on in just hockey mode all year round, basically. But our lacrosse team was unbelievable, and they still are, obviously. So it was cool to be at a school like that obviously harped on the three most important things. They were big on religion, academics, and sports, and to be a part of it during probably the most dominant time in Del Barton hockey history was pretty cool as well.
That's awesome. That eventually led you to play in college. You mentioned the three things that you always thought about doing: Frozen Four, Stanley Cup Final, and the Olympics. And as you said, you're going to get a shot for sure at two of those things. You never know about the third, but in terms of two of those. So Yale speaks for itself. You got an Ivy League education. The process for you to go from prep school, I know you played a lot of AAA hockey in Jersey as well growing up. How was that process, and how did you ultimately decide, I'm going to be a Yale Bulldog?
Yeah, so I guess probably early in my junior year, I really started to get interest from a lot of schools at Del Barton. And my head coach, Bruce Chattel, was great for me, not only in my hockey development in high school, but he was also a great guy for advice and whatnot. To be honest, early on in the recruiting process, Yale came along, and neither of my parents went to college, and obviously Yale speaks for itself, like you said. So when they came around, they were interested. Obviously, I took a visit. I met Coach Keith Elaine and saw the beautiful campus, saw the amazing arena, and it was still early on in the recruiting process with other schools, but I'll never forget. We were kind of driving home from New Haven, and I was talking to my dad, and we were just kind of like, what are we waiting for? Why would we table anything else? This is, the best of both worlds here. It was a no-brainer. So I think I called Elaine the next day and said I'd love to commit. So it was nice to get it done early in my junior year, and it couldn't have worked out any better, really.
That's awesome. I'm going to get back to hockey in a minute, but I got to ask you one thing Yale-related, that's not hockey-related. What did you study there? What's your major? What was your degree in?
Political science. To be honest, I have very little interest in politics. That's just kind of the most broad major that isn't as math and science based. And obviously, the Yale curriculum is extremely difficult. So that major is really, other than an English major or something where I have to write a crazy amount of papers, which I had no interest in. The poli-sci major was really the one to get me off the hook with more math and science-based courses, which wasn't really my strong suit either.
Yeah, right. I gotcha. So in terms of the playing at Yale, your development there, you and I crossed paths a couple times here and there in your college days. I've been around the college game, as you know, for about 20 years. So I know a lot of you guys that have went that route. To me, it's the absolute best way to go. I know the argument's always been there, major junior, NCAA. But look, man, you got a degree from Yale in your back pocket. So most guys can't say that. But in terms of the development, as you look back on that, Kenny, now that you're removed almost 10 years from that, sorry if I made you feel old there, but you're almost 10 years removed from that. What are a couple of the biggest things that in terms of development that you take away, that you learned at Yale, that you still use today?
Well, I think a couple of things. First, I will say, I've been playing professional hockey for about 9 years now. Take this for what it's worth. I've never met a player that regretted going to college over major junior. I've met plenty of players that wish they played in college over major junior. So that's that. But in terms of my development, specifically, well, I guess more broadly for a college hockey perspective, the reason why I think the college hockey development is so much better is, first and foremost, you're playing against older players. Obviously major junior, the oldest you can be is 21, and there's only a finite amount of those allowed in the league. Versus college, where you could be a 21-year-old freshman. If you repeat, go to juniors, the year to get your grades up, whatever it may be. So you're playing men that could be freshmen, whereas major junior, maybe it's more offensive, you could say, but you're not going to get that development of playing against a man. I think college hockey is way more, off ice weight management based. I think there's a lot, more strict lifting curriculum than there is maybe major junior. And then just obviously I think there's nothing like playing college hockey. You're playing for your school, you're playing in front of your students, your friends, your family. It's just such a special experience that I think is huge for your development as a person and a player. And then specifically in terms of Yale, I think I couldn't have been fortunate enough to play for a better coaching staff from top to bottom. And they really helped develop me not only skill-wise and physically, but mentally as well. I think Coach Elaine and the staff were really big on teaching us how to be mentally tough in all situations, and it's definitely something that I've used in my pro career, both in hockey situations and in the business side of situations when things maybe aren't going your way. So, for me, really, it couldn't have been a better development experience and just amazing hockey memories for me and my family and friends.
Yeah, your coach, you know this, but I'll put this out there for those that may not know it. Keith's been involved in many different U.S. teams throughout his coaching career, and that's great. You mentioned the mental part of it. Moving on to the next chapter in your career, you were drafted originally by Pittsburgh. You were involved in the Jerome McGinley trade that brought him to Pittsburgh, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that happened right before you guys went on the run and to win the title in 2013. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. It was actually it happened at like 3:30 Grand Rapids time, so we were in Grand Rapids for the regional the year we won it. And I remember, waking up, and my phone obviously was flooded with texts and missed calls from my then family advisor, soon-to-be agent.
Yep.
And I remember just how well the coaching staff handled it, too. They did just from the mental side. And obviously, I think at that point I was a junior, so I think I developed mentally. But the coaching staff, spoke to me before, and they really helped me. Obviously I was going to have to do some interviews that morning and whatnot to address it, but just to kind of put that in the back burner and realize how important the task at hand was, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, and you ended up going to Calgary. I love the fact, I'll always remember this conversation, Kenny, and I know you know the name TJ Hensick. I knew TJ very well at Michigan. Him and Kevin Porter, who won the Hobie when he was at Michigan, and now coaching in the American League. Those guys both said to me many times, they're like, why would I pass this up? And my point is, pass up playing 4 years in college. And you kind of referenced this earlier. I give you a lot of credit because you could have signed and came back. Why did you ultimately come back after you guys won when you were a junior?
Well, there's a few factors. For one, obviously, like you said, like you just said, Hensick said, it's such a special opportunity to play college hockey. I really believe it. I think it's one of the greatest joys in our sport. So that's obviously a huge factor. And the other factors were, I was fortunate enough to be a true freshman at Yale, which, like we talked about, some players in college hockey are 21. I was fortunate enough to enter at 18. So I felt that extra year of development in college, was great to get, and I'd still be a 22-year-old pro or 21-year-old pro when I signed, actually. Mm-hmm. But that was a huge factor, and obviously another factor was Yale. Yale, it was hard enough for me to get in and hard enough for me to get through it. I didn't feel that if I left a year early, there would be any chance of me finishing those 4 years and graduating. So that was a huge factor as well.
Smart guy. I like that, Kenny. So you bounce around with a handful of different teams in the NHL. I want to get into where you're at now. Obviously, you know what we're doing here at Portable TV with the KHL and our growing and expanding coverage of the league and what we're doing. And I love the league, man. I love the offensive part of the league. I love the skill part of the league. So probably a tough decision for you, I would think. Or did you feel like you tried so many places, I want to go a spot where I can ultimately be the guy or one of the key guys on the team? Is it more of that for you, Kenny, or was it more in your decision to sign with Torpedo?
Yeah, no, I think it was probably a combination of it all. Obviously, my goal was to always play in the NHL, and I wanted to play in the NHL as long as I possibly could. That's the dream. That's everyone's goal. And it just felt like in the last 2 years, I wasn't getting that opportunity. Whether it was deserved or not, I felt obviously I still feel like I play in the NHL, but like the AHL was getting, not to discredit the league, but it just stale to me. It's an amazing hockey league. It's a great developmental league for the NHL, but it was getting much younger. The environment was getting more geared towards just developing young pros to hopefully develop into NHLers versus establishing that competitive pro atmosphere where you're competing to win games and win a championship. The AHL hasn't really stayed like that. It used to be like that earlier in my pro career, but it's now more of a developmental league. Whereas the KHL, I think it's a step up from the AHL. It's considered the second best league in the world by most people in hockey, and it's a chance to again compete for a championship. Compete for one team versus when you're in the NHL, AHL, up and down scenario, you don't really feel stable at times, and it's hard to feel like you're competing for an end goal of a championship when you're playing for two different teams and ultimately trying to get up to the main team. So in the KHL, it's been a great challenge, a new opportunity. It's a great style of play, like you said, and I haven't regretted my decision for a second.
So was it just Torpedo, or were there other teams that your agent and you talked to? How did that process work for you, and how'd you end up eventually signing with the team you're with now?
Yeah, there were definitely other teams throughout my free agency process, I guess, with the KHL. But to be honest, the Torpedo just seemed like the best fit, and fortunately, it ended up being the best fit for a number of reasons. Obviously, it helped talking to Andy. That's a big thing when you're an import, especially in Russia in this league. It's really important to get some familiarity with other imports on the team because obviously there's a language barrier, and you want to get a sense of, for someone coming from North America, how the adjustment is in that city and with that team. And he was great, being as honest as he could, explaining how the transition would be here. And obviously having a English-speaking coaching staff with Torpedo and, David being from Toronto, that helped. And just talking to Oni as well, getting a sense of the style that Torpedo plays, it seemed to be a good fit. And fortunately, it seemed to work out so far.
It's certainly working out. You got 20 already. That's great. So did you and Andy have a connection where you guys, I'm sure you played against one another in the American League, the National League, whatever it was. Did you guys have any further connection than that?
Yeah, it's, I'm sure you've realized this from talking to so many hockey players. The pro hockey world, the hockey world in general is pretty small, but the professional hockey world is so small. There's literally never more than 1 degree of separation, I think, between any professional hockey player in the world. So, we both have mutual friends and former teammates that we've played, with and against on different teams throughout the AHL and NHL. So there were a couple guys that kind of connected us, and it's for the most part, hockey players are fairly like-minded, and we seem to get along from our conversations back in the U.S. And him and his family welcomed me in Nizhny right away, and he was crucial really to my transition process here.
That's great. How long do you feel that it took you to get, one, adjusted to living in a different part of the world, and two, maybe now you're dealing with winter? What were those adjustments like for you?
Yeah, well, I guess it's two different times for the adjustment. The winter is real, that's for sure. That's one thing that definitely meets the hype. But I would say the adjustment, the hardest parts of the adjustment period here, I would say it took about a few weeks just to get used to the language barrier. But we're fortunate to live in the smartphone era where it's pretty amazing how easy it is to get around with Google Translate everywhere. But obviously the language barrier is tough. And like I said earlier, the biggest challenge is the disconnection from back home with the time change. It's really only half a day. We're on the same page as everyone in the States. But, other than that, the people in Nizhny were super friendly. So many stereotypes, I think that, maybe older stereotypes in the U.S. about the Soviet nature of Russians is just so false. People are so friendly all over the world, you realize, and definitely here I've learned. And the winter adjustment is that took place probably mid-December. It's extremely cold and dark, and a lot of snow, which is exactly what you've heard and expected for Russian winters, and it's lived up to the hype.
Kenny, we could probably go on for another half an hour. We got about a minute or so left, so I'm going to wrap it up with a couple of quick ones for you. The fact that this team, this U.S. team that you guys are going to put on the ice, throughout this we've talked, we both love college hockey. How awesome is it that every single guy on this roster has played college hockey here in the U.S.?
I think it's so cool. It's something, obviously me and Meals have talked about, me and my dad have talked about it. I think that's a really cool thing, and I think it's going to be great for, obviously, college hockey in the States, and it's probably cool for so many different fan bases throughout the country, rivals, rooting for players that maybe they root against during the college hockey season. It's a really cool, special thing, and I think we're all looking forward to that aspect of it.
Awesome. Couple more quick ones before we say so long. Favorite scene in the movie Miracle? We talked about that in the beginning of this.
Oh man, favorite scene. I mean, the again scene is pretty special. I honestly think when Herb Brooks when he wins it and he takes a moment to celebrate in the hallway by himself, for some reason that's always a goosebumps moment for me. And there's nothing like seeing that goal by Ruzioni, I think, in the movie.
Yep, that's pretty awesome. I'm with you on that. And then lastly, do you have a favorite Olympian that you watched, or just in general a favorite? Who's your favorite U.S. player you've ever seen?
I mean, Phelps was pretty unbelievable to be old enough to watch that run. That was pretty special. I think Michael Phelps was probably my favorite Olympian to watch. Other than that, just one of my other favorite Olympic memories, even though we were on the losing end of it. I'll never forget being in New York City at the ESPN Zone with the Barton hockey team watching that 2010 Olympics. Just the celebration from our team when Parisi scored that game-tying goal in the third period, which obviously Crosby eventually won it. I was a huge Crosby fan at the time, so it was a little easier to swallow. But that was a pretty special Olympic memory of mine.
That's awesome. Kenny, can't thank you enough for this. Joining us from Russia. Enjoy watching you and Mealy play in your team. Congrats on being an Olympian, and hopefully we can connect when you guys are over there in some way, form, or fashion. Really means a lot. You took the time. Thanks, and congrats on being a U.S. Olympian, Kenny.